something that I've kind of reconciled is that I take individual guidance from the traditions to an extent. And for me, when it comes to issues of like people's opinions or discomfort or issues around my being trans, God is my authority. I don't answer to other people about those things.
I've heard it through the grapevine. Welcome. It's the AA Grapevine half-hour variety hour featuring the collected voices of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm Don, an alcoholic in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Hey everybody, I'm Sam, an alcoholic in Palm Springs, California.
Hiya, Sam.
How are you, Mr. Don?
I'm good. I just went to a men's meeting this morning. There was about 40 men there, and I just was sitting there thinking during the meeting, AA is the most amazing thing. When I first came in, I just felt like these people in AA will talk about anything.
These people.
It's amazing. We were talking about negative self-talk.
I have no idea what that is. I've never experienced it.
No. Well, it's every time I do something wrong and go mentally, you stupid idiot, or something along those lines.
A little bleepity bleep worthy.
There's a guy in my own group who goes, if you talk to me the way I talk to myself, I'd have to kill you.
Be nice to my friend. So me talking to you about your negative self-talk, be nice to my friend, Don.
Be nice to my friend, yeah. And so all these guys are sharing really deeply about secret thinking, secret talking that we do to ourselves that we never tell anyone about. In fact, it was hidden from myself what I did to myself when I came in.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we talk about, the committee that's running in the background. That's always
the itty bitty bleepity bleep committee.
That's right.
Once I got to where showing up to a meeting, my shoulders weren't up around my ears and being nervous and stressed out, once I became a part of and kind of relaxed into all this, it's amazing what we will talk about. And the thing is, it's a supportive conversation. I love that. Don, who's our guest today?
Today's guest is Dana F. from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But first, the news!
Announcing our new Grapevine Weekly Open AA meeting, every Wednesday at noon Eastern Time. This is a very exciting new development in Alcoholics Anonymous Grapevine. We feature a host and 2 speakers each week, including Grapevine article contributors, AA members, and trusted servants. All are welcome. You don't want to miss this. It's an online speaker meeting. Your camera and mic are off, so sit back, watch, and listen, and find the link in our Instagram account. Just search Instagram for AA Grapevine, or you can plug these numbers into your Zoom client. 871-2036-8287 is the meeting ID. The passcode is 238047. Hey, and if Wednesdays aren't a good time to join, the meeting is its own podcast as well. The Grapevine Weekly Open AA Meeting podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, and you can also listen on aagrapevine.org.
I've been listening every week. Have you heard about our Grapevine book, Forming True Partnerships? As the chapter on Step 4 in the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions puts it, when we were drinking, many of us had a total inability to form a true partnership with another human being. This collection of Grapevine stories shows the many way members use the 12 steps, sponsorship, and the tools of the program to improve and repair their relationships. It's got colorful stories on families, friendships, marriage, divorce, dating, romance, co-workers, sponsorships, and pets. Forming True Partnerships covers a wide range of experiences from sober alcoholics, all focused on how we form true partnerships with others. Get it now at aagrapevine.org.
Hi, all. My name is Dana. I'm an alcoholic based in Philadelphia, PA. My sobriety date is October 14th of 2019, and my home group is the LGBT beginners group of AA that meets every Monday evening in Philadelphia.
Dana, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Dana, what was going on with you in 2019 that caused you to give up the fight and go to AA?
What was going on was that I had been out of college for about 4 years or so and had fallen into a really deep rut, drinking heavily by myself. And, I was working in the service industry. And at that point, I was working at a brewery, and that didn't help things any, as you can imagine. And so I had a little bit of a commute and really high, sort of intense work environment, a lot of stress because I'm a very anxiety prone person, have a lot of perfectionism. And I hit a point where I got lucky. I had a sort of a moment of grace because the decision I made was not to get sober. The decision was I need to quit this job. I can't do this anymore. I can't take it anymore.
Okay.
And so I didn't really have a plan, but I just gave my notice and something had to change. It took me only about 6 months of drinking alcoholically by myself to realize what it was. I knew what it was immediately, and I had no problem saying it, but being an alcoholic, sort of meant that I had a decision to make, right? I just thought that there was nothing I could do and was depressed and hated myself, and I didn't want to be living my life the way that it was, but I knew I was powerless, but I thought that was the end of it. I thought, like, there's no point, right? There's nothing that can happen here. And that's kind of how I went along.
There was no hope.
Yeah, no hope at all, right? And so I knew what I was, and that helped me have a really strong first step. But the interesting thing was that the thought kind of felt like it came from outside of me, which was just like, maybe we can do something about this if I can just create a gap, just create like a small window where the rhythm changes. And, I got my first 24 hours and then kind of skidded along.
You mean you just quit cold turkey? You just quit?
A little bit, yeah. Kind of bouncing here and there, kind of going down and drinking again.
Yeah, I did that too.
A little bit of switching to marijuana to try and displace it. And that didn't really work for me. It wasn't my thing. And then eventually came to the program. After about like maybe 45 days without a drink, I finally kind of was like, I need something else and a friend. So really, like, quitting drinking was not the intention. And then once I got some days, and, the first 24 hours felt like a miracle, and that was the longest ever. And then, I got 4. And of course, like at this point, I didn't have a conception of being completely sober from all drugs and alcohol at that point. And that's fine. That wasn't really the issue, because alcohol was the thing that was really in my way, right? Because when I say that I had realized from, pretty quickly that, like, this is alcoholism. That's what this is. A couple of years after that realization, I sort of was like, the drinking isn't my problem, but it is the thing that's stopping me from doing anything about my problem, about the way my life is, how I feel about myself, how I talk to myself, my, seeming inability to kind of like make changes in life and pursue the things I want to pursue, right? And people often say in the rooms, life got very small, my world got very small. And that was pretty much it. I didn't really have a lot of friends around. I went to work, made do, and, but was also not out as a trans person and wasn't able to really have space to reckon with that. The depression and the deep loneliness and the, sort of failure of those efforts, to date or to meet people or progress in, my art or any of those things, right?
How did you hear of AA?
Mainly it was through a therapist that I was seeing at the time that I was trying to stop drinking. And the thing I like to tell that's kind of funny about that is, she would kept persistently reminding me, why don't you try it? Maybe just go, check it out. And the first time she ever said that, I said, no, because if I go, I'm never going to drink again.
That's it. That's the way I felt.
It's a scary thought, isn't it?
I know what this is about.
Well, yeah. Well, and the funny thing, though, is that that was the truth thus far. Some 6.5 odd years later, right? It's like, that's the case. And I went the next day.
Do you recall what that experience was going to that first meeting?
It was a meeting in Santa Cruz, California. It was a small group for trans members of AA. I don't really remember what was said, but it was confusing, but there was something about the people, a sense of self-assuredness and calm.
They were well.
Yeah, they weren't blaring at me through a megaphone about how amazing life was, or any of that, but they seemed okay. And that really worked for me because I think when I was a newcomer, the sense of life is amazing. That wasn't quite the right sell for me, and that's why that as a fellowship, right, we've got a lot of different angles, experiences, and ways of sharing the message and carrying the message. It was just sort of like, all right, we're here, we're gonna have a meeting, like ho hum a little bit maybe, and so I don't really know what I got from it, but afterward I met up with someone that I was dating and said, yeah, I don't really know what it was, but it was all right. I think I'm gonna go back next week.
I love that.
Yeah, and thus begins a long series of decisions that I made without really knowing what decisions I was making, and oftentimes without wanting to. Right, I didn't want to go, but it's about those moments of willingness that seem to, skip back over the habits that we've built. Everything that changes in life since that point comes from if I do the opposite of what I think is going to happen or what I think I should do or I think it should be, or what I'm afraid of, things start to move.
I came into AA in a deep hole, and it came from making one bad decision followed by another bad decision, followed by another bad decision. But I make one good decision followed by another good decision, and I find that I have begun to dig myself out of the hole.
I heard a speaker share about when she came in. I don't even think it was her sponsor, but it was just a member in the group that told her to put the cap on her toothpaste because she wasn't doing that. And so she put the cap on her toothpaste. And then she said something like, well, this is kind of messy on the sink here. Maybe if I got a glass and I put my toothbrush and my toothpaste in the glass. And she wound up cleaning her bathroom. Mm-hmm. All from a simple act of putting the cap on the toothpaste.
Very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that that's kind of what program of action has come to mean for me is not just the action of the steps, but that it's sort of like everything before that first choice to start chipping away at the problem and getting information is thinking. And, and like as an artist and like as a teacher and a writer, like thinking is a huge part of my life, but there's a section of it that's really bad for me. And the program has kind of helped me not turn that off or get rid of that part of myself, which is really important to, enjoying my life. It's action, right? And so I've watched myself do things in the process of working the steps, right? Or taking service commitments, that I was, grumbling about taking. And I was like, I don't do that. I got more important things to do. It's like I've watched myself do those things, even though my self-centered desire doesn't want to, right?
Yes.
It's the inversion of drinking when I don't want to.
What's something that you've gained that happened to you by doing something that you didn't want to do in AA?
Putting alcohol down and learning some emotional, coping skills and having some tools for the first time in my life. Things that it led to, right, is that, within a couple of months, I was able to apply to graduate school for creative writing. And I went and did that, right, and dealt with the pressures of all of that. And, through that process, met my best friend and learned a lot, right, wrote a lot. And it got me out of the city I was living in and the, tiny, dirty bedroom that I was stuck in, that I drank in. And, then from there, that led me to Philadelphia, where life has gotten, even broader and, and sort of, things got hard financially, for example, right, when I got here. And I struggled with that a lot, right? But the people and the fellowship, right, was like waiting for me. While I was in graduate school, I was able to start transitioning, right? And something that held me back a lot from pursuing hormone replacement therapy was fear, and a bunch of overanalyzing the hell out of it, right? And it was a therapist who was like, your therapy for homework for this week is to just like make a consultation, right? Which if we put that in the terms that we're talking about with the program, right? It's like program of action. It's like, why don't I talk to somebody who knows, right?
Actually look
You know,
into it,
yeah,
get
and
some
it's
information.
right, and you know, and of course, like medical practitioners for trans people, right? That's like one side of it, right? And I think that the knowledge of other trans people is even more important. The community specifically, and so that led me, to a meeting or closer to the pandemic, right? Time, an online meeting that was my home group for several years, which I highly recommend, called Trans Women and Queer Femmes of All Genders. So now when I'm in doubt, about kind of where things are headed, when I'm on kind of the front of where my life is going, and I think that there's no hope, or, it's out of control, it's all bad from here, there's no point, etc. All the things that are in the thinking, I can back up and be like, well, what happened the last time I took a risk and leaped, right? And it's like,
Yes.
if I look back, that leap 6 years ago led me here. So it's like, well, maybe I'm doing that again, and I just can't see it yet.
Well, we get our own experience to pull from as faith. I mean,
Right.
when I came in these rooms, I was having to trust some people. I came to trust some people when they were telling me how things had worked for them. But now I've got my own experience that I can look back on and say, the way that worked out, Sam, was absolutely beautiful. Why wouldn't this also?
Right, right. And I think that sponsorship and fellowship has played a huge role in that. When I arrived in Philadelphia, sometimes I would talk to people who weren't in recovery, and, a question that people make a small talk is like, oh, did you like know people? And I just like look them right in the face. I'm like, nope. But then the thing is, right, when I get here and I'm instantly going to meetings, right, and at the first meeting I go to, I raise my hand and say, hey, y'all, I'm new here. I'm not trying to slip through the cracks. I need to get plugged in. I need phone numbers. I'm looking for a sponsor, preferably another trans woman with some years and good recovery, and exactly the right person, who I still work with now, right?
Nice.
Came up to me after the meeting. There's something really special about AA in Philadelphia that means a lot to me. And within 2 weeks, right, I had like 4 or 5 sponsees, and all of them were other trans women, right? And I was able to share the experience and be of service, right, at this wavering sort of point, right, where I'm kind of unmoored, like I'm going through this huge change, and suddenly it's like, here you go.
Well, Dana, we have some listener feedback, and I think it's going to tie in really beautifully to this. And you're talking about sharing your experience and strength and hope and what you have to offer, particularly to other trans people. And our first question involves that. So please, we want to get your feedback after this as well. We have 3 questions for the Ask It Basket today, and the first one is from C.A.
C.A. writes, Dear Sam, Don, and Alice, and any guests. C.A. then goes on with some nice compliments for the podcast, and thank you for that, C.A. C.A. continues, I am a trans woman. I came out as trans about 3 years ago. I've lived in the same community for about 20 years and have been a sober member of AA in good standing all that time. Most of the AAs here have known me long before I began to transition. I've been having second thoughts about attending a local women's meeting because my presence might make the ladies feel uncomfortable. Even if they held a group conscience and voted that I could stay, Tradition 4, I still think I might silently make some of them feel uneasy. I could be the silent elephant in the room. Consequently, I also wonder if my presence might be in violation of Tradition 5, diversion from the group's primary purpose, and or Tradition 11, my presence at a specialty meeting might be unattractive to other attendees, especially because most of them knew me long before I transitioned. I keep thinking that unless I was specifically asked to attend, it might be in the best interest of the group for me not to. What are your thoughts? Thank you, C.A. C.A., thank you so much for writing that question.
So we contacted 2 people who have these responses. The first is Chevonne, and I'll play that now.
My name's Chevonne. I am an alcoholic. I am from Greensboro, North Carolina, and I've been sober for coming up on 3 years in the first week of June. There's a lot of feelings there that resonate with me. I'm a trans woman. I guess I'll start by talking about my fears with going to women's meetings. I do go to a women's meeting in town, and it's scary. It is scary. I am very self-conscious about my voice, and we have a round robin format, which forces me to speak. It's a challenge every week. I think the most important thing here is we're here for our recovery, we're here for our alcoholism, and we're here for deepening our spiritual condition. I know that when I'm giving into those fears, I'm not only hurting myself, but I'm hurting others' opportunities to recover and for other people to learn. I have built some really great relationships in that meeting. Now, I will say that I helped start that meeting. So maybe that is a possible avenue, maybe a solution, but I wouldn't start there. I would start with just trying to tackle those fears. I know that I have a hard time going to meetings where people know me from my early recovery because I'm 3 years sober. I've been transitioning for a little bit over a year. So many people knew me before the transition. And I struggle to go back to those meetings. I've recognized there's nothing wrong with those people to my knowledge. What I do know is that I have a lot of fear. That fear tells me that I've got something to work on. And that fear tells me that that could affect my sobriety. I don't think the traditions really have anything to do with this except for tradition four, which is that group's group conscience. And if the group's group conscience is that a trans woman isn't allowed there, then they have the right to be wrong about things. It's on them. And if someone finds a trans woman's presence in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting unattractive, well, we're all alcoholics, and I don't see how that's an issue with the trans person. That's an issue with someone who is struggling with their own fear. I guess I'll end with this. You know, there are people who are hateful in the world, and that is not excluded in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's people that are prejudiced, but there are folks who live by spiritual principles who love me and love others. I had a male sponsor before transitioning, and I had this conversation with him, and he said, I only have one question. Are you a sick and suffering alcoholic? When I moved to my new sponsor, I was afraid that she'd be put off, and she was so excited. It was the same feeling of warmth of someone that sees a sick and suffering alcoholic and wants to help them. So this is a program about love and tolerance, and people who are working that program are doing the thing. So thank you.
Chevonne, thank you so much for that. As a gay man who got sober in Greensboro, North Carolina, I relate to some of the fear that you've expressed. I went only to the LGBT meetings in the beginning because I was afraid and I needed to get comfortable with AA. And then I wound up going to the mainstream meetings as well. What I found was, what do you know? LGBT people are in the mainstream meetings too. And I found the comfort there as well.
To echo what Chevonne had said, a lot of this really hits home. And what I kind of realized was, hey, like if I feel isolated and on edge about being the only trans woman in this room, then how would somebody else feel who comes in after me if I leave? Right. And that someone, contrary to the idea of, my presence interfering with attraction rather than promotion, if I'm attending a women's meeting, it might be one of the only things that could help somebody stay. But when I walk into the meeting, like my gender has nothing to do with why I'm there. And if somebody else makes it about that, we'll cross that bridge when they come to it, right? But I can't let it stand in the way of my sobriety. And ultimately, it's like I'll live and I can find different meetings.
We also have a response from Maeve.
That's actually a very good question, and one I confronted myself when I came out. I got sober in early 2018. I realized I was transgender soon after. I began transitioning immediately. And I did find that as I transitioned, I felt very comfortable going to women's meetings. I identified with what they said. I just really liked the atmosphere. It made me feel at home. I had the good fortune of getting sober in New York City. New York City's a very diverse and welcoming environment, but I realize it's not the same in every part of the country. Depending on what part of the country you're in, this is probably a legitimate concern on your part. I'm really cheered that you're citing the traditions and you really just don't want to be disruptive at the meetings. But my view is if you identify as a woman, you have every right to be at a women's meeting. The issue of perhaps making some of the members of the meeting uncomfortable, depending on how you present, is a legitimate one. And one suggestion I have is you just show up a little bit early. If there are potential misunderstandings, people potentially feel uncomfortable about your presence there. Perhaps you could talk to some of the group members and explain that you're transgender, you identify as a woman, and you want to hear about women's experiences in meetings. And I think you'll find that in most cases, people will be very welcoming. I really like the way you phrased the question at the end, whether it's in the interest of the group. I actually think your presence is in the interest of the group because you would be bringing a more diverse experience, and I think that's helpful to the group. Perhaps you could pull a cisgender woman in a mixed meeting that you currently go to aside, some of that you know really well and you can confide in, and just talk about your misgivings. Perhaps that person goes to women's meetings and she may suggest a women's meeting that she feels would be very welcoming, or she may be willing to go to a women's meeting with you to help make you feel comfortable because as we know with alcoholics, a lot of times these situations are more a presence in our head than they are in real life. And if you were to go to a women's meeting with a cisgender woman who's very supportive of you, I think that might make you feel more comfortable.
Thank you, Maeve. This breaks my heart a little bit. The traditions weren't designed to be able to use to beat myself up and to find a way to exclude myself from AA. And that's what hurts here. What's your response?
I really like that response as well. I think that, there's some overlap with, one of the things that I did to kind of approach, my fear about that for a reason, right? There's some overlap there for a reason. But yeah, I also think I want to kind of emphasize something about their traditions, right? Which is that I take individual guidance from the traditions to an extent. And, one of them is that the only ultimate authority is a loving higher power, right? Remember, I'm not the problem. They seem to have a problem.
Yeah.
And just to know though that like AA allows imperfect alcoholics, right, myself included, to deliberate and maybe change and maybe progress at the group level.
So we've been talking about being isolated in AA, and we have this reply to a previous Ask It Basket question about feeling isolated and alone in AA. The subject line is making friends.
April writes to us, "Hi Don, Sam, and Alice. Go to fellowship events and mingle. Ask someone about their day or how long they've been sober. In the summer, there are campouts and cookouts and hiking meetings. See if you have a roundup in your area. You may have to drive a little way. In the wintertime, there are alcothons during the holidays. See if you have a YPOG group or meeting. Our local YPOG group, Young People in AA, has a lot of activities. I've gone out to dinner with them. Yours in love and service, April."
Thanks, April.
Thank you indeed, April. Those are some wonderful ways to get connected with other people in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Hey, folks, we want to hear your newcomer questions or questions someone has asked you. Write us at podcast@aagrapevine.org.
Or give us a call at 212-870-3418. Operators are standing by. Are they really, Don?
Dana,
sure it's not
thanks
just
so
an answering machine.
Dana, thanks so much for joining us today.
Indeed. Thank you, Dana.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
My name's Courtney. I'm an alcoholic in Seattle, Washington. I subscribe to the Grapevine because it's an amazing tool to carry the message. The Grapevine's been around for like 80 years. Like this thing's been going on since like a local intergroup, right? And so it reaches correctional facilities, people in remote communities. And I would take one and I'd put it in my bag and read it in between meetings. It's a really important tool as part of our recovery for me.
Want to contribute without receiving a subscription? Visit aagrapevine.org and choose Carry the Message to help provide subscriptions to those in need.
Thank you for supporting this podcast. You can subscribe in the app for only $2.99 a month, and that really does support everything that Grapevine does, including the podcast.
$3 a month? Come on.
I'm at the very wit's end. Cuckoo.
A guy goes out after 5 months in the program. He comes back to his home group one night, plastered.
Welcome back. Now you need to put the plug in the jug. I'd hate to come to your funeral.
I didn't invite you anyhow.
It's really not that funny.
Thank you for joining us. The AA Grapevine Half-Hour Variety Hour is posted every Monday and is produced by AA Grapevine, Inc. We don't speak for Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole, but we do share the experience, strength, and hope of members to help others recover from alcoholism. All things Grapevine are available at aagrapevine.org, including our app and how to get in touch with us. Find us on Instagram and YouTube. If you want to know more about Alcoholics Anonymous, visit aa.org or search Alcoholics Anonymous in your city.